Welcome to the dark side of love. I wasn't supposed to walk into that room. One small decision, a hand on a doorknob, a step across the threshold, and everything I thought I knew about trust, about safety, about myself, collapsed. My name is Claire Henderson. I'm 39 years old, divorced, childless, and for the last 5 years I've been a foster mother. It started as a way to give back, but in reality, it was my way of trying to fill an emptiness I never dared to name out loud. After my marriage ended, after 10 years of infertility treatments, resentment, and watching the man I once loved turn into a stranger, I needed something, a reason to keep waking up. Fostering was supposed to be that reason, a way to bring stability to kids who had none, to give them what I never got to give my own child. When Alex came into my life, I thought it was going to be like all the other placements, temporary, fragile, another name I would care for and then let go. But Alex wasn't like the others. Alex was 17 when he moved in. Almost a man, but still legally under my care. He arrived with nothing but a backpack, a chipped phone, and eyes that carried the weight of someone who had seen too much, too young. I had fostered loud boys before, kids who rebelled, tested boundaries, shouted at me just to see if I would shout back. Alex wasn't like that. He was quiet, too quiet, polite, guarded, almost deliberate. I remember our first dinner, spaghetti and salad, the safest welcome meal. I expected silence, awkwardness. Instead, he looked at me across the table and said softly, "Thanks, Claire." Not ma'am, not miss, Claire. Already familiar, already personal. It caught me off guard. At first, we barely spoke. He kept to himself, kept his room meticulously neat, followed every house rule without complaint. It almost made me uneasy, as though he was trying too hard not to give me a reason to look closer. But then, little by little, he started to appear in my world, helping me chop vegetables in the kitchen, asking about my job. I'm a freelance editor, nothing glamorous. Sitting on the couch while I worked, watching the flicker of my laptop screen, and eventually joining me for late-night crime dramas on weekends. It felt innocent, sweet even. I told myself it was progress, that he was opening up. But I should have noticed that he wasn't just opening up. He was studying me. At first, the signs were so small, I brushed them aside. One night, I passed by his room and heard him talking in a low whisper. I figured it was a friend on the phone. But when I mentioned it the next morning, he froze, then smiled too quickly and said, "Just music, Claire." A week later, I found a sketchbook in the living room. Out of curiosity, I flipped it open. The first few pages were harmless, doodles, landscapes, messy scribbles. But then, I saw my own face, not once, not twice, dozens of times. My profile, my hands, the curve of my shoulders as I leaned over the sink. Some were gentle, almost affectionate. Others were darker. Eyes shadowed, lips twisted into an expression I didn't recognize as my own. I felt a chill crawl up my spine. When I confronted him, Alex just smiled faintly and said, "You're the only person who's ever really seen me." I wanted to return the favor. Something about the way he said it didn't feel like gratitude. It felt like possession. I told myself I was overreacting, that he was just a lonely kid with an artistic streak. But the truth was, a seed of unease had already taken root. And once planted, it grew quickly. Little things started piling up. A coffee mug moved from where I left it. A drawer slightly ajar when I swore I had closed it. The faintest smell of my perfume in the hallway outside his room. I tried to ignore it, to rationalize it all. But one night, while I was asleep, I heard footsteps, slow, careful, just outside my bedroom door. I froze, holding my breath, heart pounding against my ribs. When I opened the door, the hallway was empty. Alex's door was closed. But something told me he hadn't been sleeping. The next morning, he acted as if nothing had happened. He made me coffee. He asked how I slept. And when I looked at him, really looked at him, I saw something new in his eyes. Not innocence, not gratitude. Something sharper, calculating. That was the moment I realized Alex wasn't just living in my house. He was watching me, testing me. And I didn't know how much longer I could pretend I didn't notice. Then came the night I stepped into his room. I wasn't supposed to, but curiosity, or maybe survival, pushed me over the threshold. And what I found inside shattered me. His room was neat, too neat. No posters, no clutter, just a bed, a desk, and shelves lined with notebooks. I pulled one at random, heart hammering. Inside were pages of detailed notes. But they weren't about school. They were about me. My schedule. My habits. What I ate for breakfast. When I left the house. How long I showered. Every moment of my life documented in his careful, deliberate handwriting. It wasn't admiration. It wasn't affection. It was surveillance. I staggered back, nearly dropping the notebook. My chest tightened, breaths shallow. What kind of person studies someone like this? What kind of boy does this to the woman who took him in? I put the notebook back and slipped out before he could catch me. But from that night on, I never slept the same way again. I kept my door locked. I kept the lights on. And I started counting the days until he turned 18. Because deep down, I knew the truth. When that day came, Alex wouldn't be my responsibility anymore. But would I still be his obsession? His 18th birthday arrived quietly. No party, no celebration, just a cake I bought out of obligation and silence thick enough to choke on. When he blew out the candles, he didn't make a wish. He just looked at me, long, unblinking. That night, I barely slept. I kept replaying that look in my mind, and when dawn came, I realized I wasn't safe. Not really. Not in my own home. So I did something I never thought I'd do. I packed a bag. And when Alex left the house that morning, I walked out too, locking the door behind me for the last time. I didn't leave a note. I didn't say goodbye. I just disappeared because some obsessions don't end when the law says they should. And I couldn't risk finding out what Alex would do next. Sometimes, late at night, I still wonder if he ever searched for me. If he stood in that empty house, realizing I was gone. If his obsession turned into anger, or something worse. I moved cities, changed my number, learned to live with the paranoia of checking over my shoulder. Because the truth is, You don't just walk away from someone like Alex. You survive them. You carry the weight of what they did to you. And you pray that obsession never finds its way back into your life. People ask me why I never reported him, why I didn't tell my husband everything. The truth? Shame, fear, and the unbearable thought that no one would believe me. Because what proof did I have? A few drawings? A notebook full of observations? People would have said I was overreacting, that he was just a boy. But I know what I felt. The weight of his gaze, the silence that pressed down on me when we were alone. That wasn't the imagination of a paranoid woman. That was real. Even now, years later, I check the locks twice before bed. I sleep with the lights on, and sometimes I wake up certain that I heard footsteps just outside my door. Maybe it's just trauma. Maybe it's just my mind replaying the past. But deep down, I know obsessions don't die. They wait. And one day, when I least expect it, I'm terrified that Alex will find me again. Not as a boy, but as a man. So if you're hearing this story now, ask yourself, do you really know who's watching you? And tell me, where are you watching my story from tonight?